you got to choose. Are you going to side with Kamala Harris?
There's no silver lining in freedom, in slavery.
That's why it's mortifying to hear people say that you benefit from slavery in any way.
It is particularly a very difficult time for Black conservatives around the country, particularly the Black conservative that I think I call out the most, Byron Donalds, who is the congressman from the 19th Congressional District of Florida. He has come under fire, not by me, but by the Ron Desantis campaign, because Byron Donalds had the unmitigated gall to call out, and again, let me not say call out. His response to Ron DeSantis's new curriculum stating that Black people or enslaved people benefited from slavery, it was really timid. It was gentle. Let me read for you what Byron Donalds said that got him to be the target of the DeSantis campaign. This is what he said on Twitter, quote, "The new African American standards in Florida are good." No, they're not. "Robust and accurate. That being said, the attempt to feature the personal benefits of slavery is wrong and needs to be adjusted. That obviously wasn't the goal, and I have faith that the Florida Department of Education will correct this." I mean, listen, this is lighter than a slap on the wrist. He did everything he could to gently massage the criticism, the critique, to say, hey, white conservatives, I don't want to fall out of grace with you. I'm not trying to get out of line, but this is just a bridge too far. Well, Christine Pushaw, who is the social media director for Ron DeSantis, this is what she said on Twitter and ratioed him. She said, "Did Kamala Harris write this tweet?" Now, to be fair to her, which I don't have to be, that was the mildest response of all the conservatives. This is another response saying, quote, "You'll never get my vote again, sellout." Another one said, "You really have sold out for Trump." Okay, yeah, all right. And then another said, "It didn't take you long to sell out, did it?" And then another said, "Here comes the sellout. Pathetic, dude. Pathetic." You know, what Byron Donalds said was so mild. I mean, he's basically saying you got a 99% Ron DeSantis on your curriculum, but that 1% difference is something that I feel like you can correct. And would you please, sir, please consider correcting it? And the DeSantis campaign said, hell no. DeSantis supporters said, get in line, get back. So much for all the times I've heard Byron Donalds call Black people who vote Democratic, and he says that they're on the plantation of the Democratic Party. Who's being whipped? Ron DeSantis has responded to Byron Donalds' mild criticism of the language in the new Florida curriculum. This was his response to Donalds.
At the end of the day, you got to choose. Are you going to side with Kamala Harris in liberal media outlets? Or are you going to side with the state of Florida? And I think it's very clear that these guys did a good job on those standards. It wasn't anything that was politically motivated. These are serious scholars. You've seen Dr. Allen out on TV talking about the stories, talking about his own family history and everything like that. So don't side with Kamala on that. Stand up.
So Ron DeSantis is now telling Black conservatives not to stand up for their Blackness, but rather stand up for his particular Florida curriculum. He's not siding with Kamala Harris. I can certainly tell you that. If you ask any Black conservative what they think about Kamala Harris, they are not siding with Kamala Harris or Ron DeSantis. They're siding with their Blackness. They're siding with the reality that under no circumstances should we try to cast a single facet of slavery in a positive light. Here is Matt Walsh from the Daily Wire. This is what he said on Twitter, quote, "Any Republican who repeats Kamala Harris' talking points loses huge amounts of credibility. Very disappointed to see from Byron Donalds. The curriculum briefly mentions that some slaves utilize skills after being freed. This is objectively true, and we shouldn't teach it because it hurts my feelings isn't a legitimate or respectable position." See, Byron? See what they really think about you? You know, the fact that the truth about what happened after slavery is almost as bad as what happened during slavery. the amount of laws that were wielded against us to block us from making any progress on our own, the amount of violence that came down on Black people after they were freed, how many Black people had to stay because they had no other, they were not given any resource. They were freed and say, go and be on your own accord. Just survive on your own. And then to try to frame it, I should not have even argued this from the position of where Matt Walsh was trying to argue. He's trying to argue that last generation. How many generations before that lived and died in slavery without the opportunity to utilize any of the skills that were passed down to them from generation to generation because we had skills when we arrived here, when you brought us here? The cruelty is the point, right? I think they enjoy pouring salt into the open wound that is America's original sin. And my original take was almost to just say, you know what, Black conservatives, I told you so. And you know what, I can admit when I needed to shift and change a little bit, because despite the fact that I disagree with the politics of these Black conservatives, I can't help but to be extremely proud of the fact that when the rubber met the road, these not all Black conservatives, but these Black conservatives, Byron Donalds, who I have never said a kind thing about, I have to admit that I am proud of this brother taking a stand against Ron DeSantis at the risk of his own career. The rest of Byron Donalds' politics suck. He still supports Donald Trump, but when it came down to his Blackness, he said, no, I'm going to draw the line here. And so I salute that brother, even if it's in a limited sense. You even have Senator Tim Scott, who came out and said the exact thing, that there's no reason for anyone to try to cast a single component of slavery as something positive. And listen, have you ever heard me say something positive about Tim Scott? But I would be remiss. It would be a shame on my Blackness if I allowed my disdain for all of the rest of their politics to make me ignore the fact that in this moment, they are speaking the truth. Listen to this clip. I apologize for the quality of the audio. It's a little difficult to hear, but if you listen closely, Tim Scott is speaking the truth.
As a country founded upon freedom, greatest deprivation of freedom was slavery. There's no silver lining in freedom, in slavery. The truth is that anything you can learn, that any benefits that people suggest you had during slavery, you would have had as a free person. What slavery was really about separating families, about mutilating humans, and even raping their wives. It was just devastating. So I would hope that every person in our country, and certainly running for president, would appreciate that. And listen, people have bad days. Sometimes they regret what they say, and we should ask them again to clarify their positions.
Well, they did ask him again. And see, this is where I start parting ways with my conservative brothers and sisters. I part ways with them because they are giving Ron DeSantis too much of the benefit of the doubt. Byron Donalds' criticism of this curriculum was very tepid. It was a slight disagreement. If there was 99% agreement, there was only 1% of disagreement, and yet and still it was enough for the DeSantis campaign to come out full-throated against them. I mean, the number of people who call this man a sellout. I've called him a sellout myself. I'm not even going to front. But to see white Republicans calling this Black man a sellout, these two Black men sellouts because they stood up for their Blackness. You just have to forgive me. I just could not possibly sit back and not say something about that. But to Tim Scott's point, there is literally nothing that Black people may have acquired during slavery that they could not have acquired in freedom, and that there is no silver lining in slavery. Where I disagree with Tim Scott on, and Ron DeSantis disagrees with them also, is the fact that we should give them another chance to answer. Well, Ron DeSantis got another chance to answer. He was asked by another reporter at the same event. And this time, Ron DeSantis got upset because, well, two reasons. One, how dare anyone question the Fuhrer? And number two, well, Ron DeSantis is just a small, petty man who's not ready for prime time. Listen in.
Were there beneficial aspects to slavery?
That's not what the curriculum says.
What do you think?
No, it's not. And the curriculum is very clear. You have, I think it's like 200 plus pages of all kinds of stuff that you can't read that. Have you read it?
So what's your opinion?
Have you read it?
I'm asking your opinion.
But you haven't read it, so I'm just making that clear. That makes it very clear about the injustices of slavery in vivid detail. So anyone that actually read that and then listens to Kamala would know that she's lying. And that particular provision about the skills, that was in spite of slavery, not because of. The AP course has made that same point. Other courses have made that same point. Nobody said anything about that. And Dr. Allen and those people will say, look, this is what was used post-bellum when these folks were doing stuff. So that was very, very clear, and I would just say, people can read it, but they did a very good job on it, and there can be no confusion about where they would come down on that.
He keeps referencing Dr. Allen. This is the guy the black man who's gone across Fox News and so many other platforms to defend Ron DeSantis, but completely ignores the fact that there are plenty of black conservatives who have a problem with this language very directly to state under any circumstances that there was a benefit to the cruelty of chattel slavery in the United States of America is a slap in the face. And as black conservatives are standing up for their blackness, white Republicans are trying to whip them back into submission, whip them back onto the plantation of the Republican Party. And, forgive me for using the same language that they try to use as it pertains to black people who might be progressive. They always like to say that black people who are not a part of the Republican Party are somehow on the plantation of the Democratic Party. Well, this is really plantation and slave master behavior coming from Ron DeSantis. He is refusing to acknowledge that there are high-ranking Republicans in his party, black Republicans in his party, who absolutely take issue with every bit of this language about there being a benefit to black people from slavery. Yet he regularly goes and says, I have a black friend who still supports me. Well, sure, but at least that there are black conservatives with enough integrity, enough soul in their blackness to stand up to you, even at the risk of their careers. Now, I might regret this in the next week, because they're going to say something that I'm going to have to slam them on. They're going to come out with some of their anti-vax messaging. They'll come out with some of their anti-science, anti-climate change, anti-trans talking points. So I'm sure I'm going to regret this next week. But as it stands right now, they are on the right side of this, and Ron DeSantis and his campaign think that they are big enough to tell black Republicans to get in line. Now, I want to play one last clip on this story, because I think this individual, Clark, she's a black conservative, and I hope I don't regret playing this next week, because I've seen her on Fox News attacking wokeness. Okay. Yes, but a broken clock can be right. And this clip that I'm going to play for you, I think, is absolutely sound. The comparison is apt. You do not get to flex any skills that were learned from trauma. Trigger warning, this clip contains references to sexual assault.
So I've been thinking about this whole Florida education standards thing. And, if you were sexually assaulted as a minor repeatedly for years and years and years, and then you claim that your sexual assault made you a better lover, it would mortify people. That's why it's mortifying to hear people say that you benefit from slavery in any way, because learned things from trauma is not a flex. It just ain't.
It's not. That's that on that. And while I was really hesitant about playing this particular clip because of the comparison to sexual assault, truth of the matter is sexual assault was a feature of chattel slavery. It was a standardized feature of slavery in this country. And so I think the comparison is apt, even if it is difficult to hear anyone suggesting that there is a benefit that should be derived out of a sustained trauma should be ashamed of themselves. And Ron DeSantis and his entire campaign should be equally ashamed of themselves for attacking these black conservatives for standing up for truth.